So we're going to go over to the positional powerhouses. You're only going to get mine in this one. I know some that Matt has discussed with me. We agree on a lot of them. So I'm going to run through my positional powerhouses. This is going to be a super quick video. We're going to look at each position. I'll give you my powerhouse, one or two, and then the pivot play at that powerhouse position who could also put up some decent points. QB, my powerhouse was going to be Watson. There was no way you weren't going to pick him in Indy, but it has now swapped off to him onto Breeze. I think Breeze is poised for a great game here. And my pivot is going to be Goff. I already said that I'm playing a lot of Goff, and I had plans to play a lot of Goff, and that way I can fit in some bigger name running backs. Like I can stack Goff with Gurley, Ingram, throw in some wide receivers there like Des Bryant, who's pretty high up there in salary but not super high, and then some of the other guys like Doug Baldwin or even T.Y. Hilton if you want to throw in budget, or even Cooper Kupp. Like I said, he's very cheap. I'm really predicting a big game for him, but that could just be me. So we're gonna look at the running back position here. These aren't changing. I was gonna slam these guys in no matter what, and that was Ingram. Actually, my powerhouse was going to be Gurley. I was gonna throw him in pretty much every roster, and it's now being shared with Ingram, which I think a lot of the industry is looking at Ingram to have a big game, even though he's coming off a couple fumbles. I don't think that he's lost complete trust, and he has a chance here to, run in a couple more touchdowns. Your pivots off this powerhouse could be guys like Jonathan Stewart in Carolina. They've come out and said that they're going to kind of limit McCaffrey on passing plays, and I just don't think that he's built to run through. Like if you got like a third and goal and you're like 3 yards out, I don't see them putting McCaffrey in there unless they're going to do a throwing play. I see Stewart coming in here and he might get you a couple touchdowns, and he's pretty damn cheap, so you might want to plug him in. And another pivot off this would be a guy like Lamar Miller, like I said. So ownership's going to drop on that Houston game, and Lamar Miller could see a lot of touches to kind of shelter Savage and actually still be competitive in this game. He's been playing very good this year, and I wouldn't consider him a bad play at all. Moving on to the wide receiver position, my lock was going to be, my powerhouse was going to be Hopkins. I was going to throw him in everywhere, but this is now changed with the new injury, and I'm going to stack with Breeze. I'm going to stack Michael Thomas, and a pivot play in this could be putting in guys like Des Bryant and Mohamed Sanu. Or if you want to go into the New Orleans stack and get Ted Ginn in there, throw him in there. And Cooper Kupp is another huge pivot that you can do. Again, super cheap. Throw him in your lineup, slot receiver. He's going to, like I said, they don't really have a tight end that's done anything this year. So I'm going to take that slot receiver. Sammy Watkins, he doesn't do anything. Robert Woods is the only other receiver that I would like in this, but like I said, Cooper Kupp, that's who I'm going to put in a lot of my rosters as a pivot or as a low, kind of wide receiver 3 or even a flex play. Moving on to the tight end position for the positional powerhouses, we're going to look at Vernon Davis. I mentioned it earlier. He's one of two people that can catch the ball in that offense, and Kirk Cousins isn't exactly a terrible quarterback. So with a guy like Jordan Reed out and Vernon Davis now getting a lot more opportunities, and actually Crowder also being sidelined, you might see him get a lot of targets, especially against the Seattle D. The Seattle D is nothing to... They're not the Legion of Boom of the past, but they are still a great defense. So you could see in the check down having either Chris Thompson or, like I said, Vernon Davis as a tight end. He's going to be my super powerhouse, and then my pivot plays off that are going to be Ed Dixon, like I mentioned. With Kelvin Benjamin being traded, he has the market share upgrade, and a guy like Jimmy Graham, he could see a lot of action, or Jack Doyle, again, pivot to that game in Indy or in Houston, and see maybe he has another big game like he did last week. As for defenses, this isn't going to change. I was always kind of looking at the Eagles, the Saints, and those are my two big powerhouses. I think I have them in the majority of my lineups. I do have a little bit of Baltimore. Now, they're a little bit skewed because of the pick sixes and stuff against Miami, if you look at stats, but they are playing Tennessee. I don't know if Mariota's completely healthy at this point. But if you want to go cheaper, you can go Baltimore or even San Fran playing against Drew Stanton. It's always a good play to play a defense against backup quarterbacks. They don't see the same reps as the normal starters, so there's always that high potential for them to throw a pick or just make mistakes, pocket collapses, so kind of look to target games like that where you're playing a backup quarterback. San Fran could be a good play, and I don't think a lot of people are going to own them because they still think that Arizona has the weapons where they got, Fitzgerald and AP and stuff like that. So I think a good pivot play would be onto San Fran at the defensive spot. They're not super cheap, but they will give you a couple extra $100 for your salary to plug in a couple more big name plays.